Shalom everybody, Shalom from Israel, this is Ronny Simon. Would like to share some thoughts with you today about the Temple Mount. Not about the religious significance of it. I'm sure that you all know that Temple Mount is the holiest place for the Jewish people. That's where the first temple built by Solomon used to stand, the second temple built by Zerubbabel, and of course Temple Mount itself was built by King Herod the Great. And there's no question about the location, although some people would question the authenticity of the location of Temple Mount. That won't be the issue for today. I would like to share with you some of the political controversy and give you a short background about the mounting tension in the area and how things are changing based on local politics, based on Israeli interests, and above all based on Muslim interests as well. In the 7th of June of 1967, the Israeli paratroopers broke through the gates and walls of the old city, and Temple Mount was liberated, and then the rest of the old city as well. It was Israel's policy from day one, as represented by Moshe Dayan. Some of you do remember the name, who was back then the Minister of Defense, and he was the one that orchestrated the whole policy that the Israeli cabinet supported as well. It was an opportunity, that was Dayan's idea, to show the Muslim world back in 1967 that the war between Israel and the Arab countries is not a war of religion. And therefore the logic behind that was that although we liberated Temple Mount, we're not going to be sovereigns in the area. We're not going to build anything that is connected to the Jewish world. We're not going to rebuild another temple, God forbid, I'll say cynically, but we're going to leave things as they were before Israel liberated East Jerusalem. The idea was that if we are able to show the Muslim world that Israel is not engaged in a war of religion, that will help to bring the people closer to one another. And although we came out victorious, we're going to leave the Temple Mount, the holiest place for the Jewish people, in Muslim hands. And the idea was that this gesture will be so appreciated by the Muslim countries, it will have to bring the people together and maybe bring peace to the region as well. That was quite a naive way of thinking, the way that we see that today, but it looked like a logical plan back then. And there was even a consensus between the Jewish religious leadership, or the leading rabbis, and the state of Israel. Leading rabbis and Jewish sages are in the opinion that the Temple Mount is too holy for us to visit today. There was a certain ritual back in the days of the temple. The Jewish people that wanted to visit Temple Mount had to bring themselves up to the highest level of purity in order to visit Temple Mount. And that was accomplished not just by the ritual cleansing facilities in the area, but also by the ashes of the red cow or the red heifer. And since we no longer have red heifers today, we cannot bring ourselves to the religious level, to the purity level needed to visit Temple Mount, and therefore Jews that do listen to rabbinical authorities are not visiting Temple Mount. So there was a rare consensus back in 1967 between the rabbinical authorities and the state of Israel, and that was the way to accomplish a political accomplishment by using a religious provision. And therefore, for many, many decades, Jewish people did not go to visit Temple Mount because of that rabbinical provision, but not always. Everybody listens to the rabbis. Most people do not live a religious way of life in a country, and the authority of the rabbis is decreasing as well. And therefore, ever since 1967, since Israel took the Jerusalem and Temple Mount from the Jordanians, Jordan had a very important position, and the Waqf, which is the body of people that oversee the place for the Muslim world, was dominated by the Jordanians. Ever since 1993, when Israel started talking to the Palestinians about a possible peace process in the area, the Palestinians had some more authority and more power, and Israel was encouraging that. We were hoping to accomplish a deal with the Palestinians by giving them more rights vis-a-vis Temple Mount, but that was only for a limited amount of time. In 1994, Israel made peace with Jordan, and part of the peace accord was also to give the Jordanians the authority over Temple Mount. There was a committee, and Jordan is the one that is basically appointing representatives in order to see things on Temple Mount, and now there was a Jordanian political reason as well. And since the Palestinians were engaged and Israel wanted to favor the Palestinians, so we gave the Palestinians the right for a while. There was a brutal struggle between the Jordanian representatives and the Palestinians who will have the upper hand. So that's the game that everybody plays when it comes to the authority of Temple Mount. As Israel sees that, Jordan has more authority and more power to decide what will happen on top of Temple Mount. But the Jordanians, in order to appease the Palestinians as well, and to show that they are supporting them, gave some Palestinian members some rights in the council, and the council has Palestinian members today. The problem is that those Palestinians brought with them the Turkish influence. Look how complicated that is. So they're trying to give more authority to Turkey, and through the Turkish money that goes to support establishments in East Jerusalem, Turkey also wants to have more authority in what's being said and what will be the future of the Temple Mount. And that was the red line, if you wish, for the Jordanians. Jordan will not tolerate any Turkish involvement on Temple Mount, but they were not strong enough financially or politically to stop that. So they called the Saudis to their assistance. Now you need to understand that the Saudis and the Jordanians are not good friends. In fact, the Jordanian dynasty, the Hashemites, are originated in Saudi Arabia. They had the upper hand in behalf of Islam to control and to dominate the Muslim holy sites of Mecca and Medina. And the Hashemites were related to the clan of Muhammad himself, were in charge of of Mecca and Medina until the Ibn Saud family in 1925 simply expelled them from that area. And therefore the Hashemites of Jordan are coming originally from Saudi Arabia. And there was a lot of bad blood between the Saudis today and the Saudi kingdom and the Jordanians. But Jordan needs the money. Jordan is terrified from increasing Turkish influence. So is Israel, by the way. So now the Jordanians are going to invite the Saudis to be more involved in what happens on Temple Mount, and that will be with Israeli consent. Israel is busily working behind the scenes to have more, I would say, allies among the Arab countries. The ultimate goal is to undermine the position of Iran in the area. Iran is not demanding anything on Temple Mount, at least not yet. Irans are Shiites, and there was a consensus among the Muslim world that Sunnis should have the overall engagement and authority in Temple Mount, and that gives the Saudis a leverage that Jordanians are going to use. So things are standing right now, and everything is behind the scenes, and we only have some rumors recently released to the press, is that Israel is going to favor Saudi involvement in Temple Mount just to try to kick the Turks out of it. And the Jordanians are going to say yes as well, not because suddenly they like the Saudis. The Saudis are coming with a lot of money, and Jordan needs the money. So new things, a new position, a new dynamic, a new power and control around Temple Mount. So it sounds absolutely ridiculous how things are working. But in Israel, you hear some new voices as well. Until recently, Israeli officials never stated that Israel should aspire to go back to Temple Mount. Everybody settled for the Western Wall. But the Western Wall, I have to say, is second best. The Western Wall was a compromise to the Jewish world because Temple Mount was out of reach. But now with all the controversy in the Muslim Arab world, with the great involvement of Turkey, who are Muslims, yes, but not Arabs, that was basically a wake-up call for the Jordanians in the area, and they are willing to compromise their authority on Temple Mount to invite the Saudis just to make sure that Turkey has no say about Temple Mount. Well, that's how politics are working, and the Jewish world is getting more involved, and you hear Israeli officials, not just nobodies, but we speak about officials in the country, in the state, that will claim that Israel should aspire for the Temple Mount and to change the status quo on Temple Mount to what it is today. Today, the status quo is very dynamic, but one thing is very solid. Jews are not permitted to pray on top of Temple Mount. So visiting, yes, with a lot of restrictions, but not praying officially. And we try to exploit now the controversy in the Muslim world, and Israeli officials would like to see more Jews visiting Temple Mount and Jews having the authority and the right, not just to visit, but also to pray on top of Temple Mount. Whenever you mention that, it brings a lot of unrest in the region, and that's where we're standing right now. Maybe we'll see a growing Saudi involvement, and maybe Israel is going to exploit the controversy which is growing within the Muslim world, and maybe the status quo will change, and Jews will have the right also, in a limited area, in a limited way, to pray on top of Temple Mount. We'll see how this is going to develop, and everything is connected, of course, to the plan of the century that was presented by President Trump about half a year ago, that will start with annexing the Jordan Valley and maybe some other places in the Palestinian territories, quote unquote, I have to say, because it was never really Palestinian. So things are changing, and maybe that will change also the position of Temple Mount. We'll see how things are going to develop, especially now with the unrest within the US of A. How committed is the Trump administration to the deal of the century? It's interesting. But whenever something happens in the region, when it concerns Israel and the Palestinians and the Arab countries and the Muslim world, the very heart of things will always be Temple Mount. Well, be safe, and this time regarding the corona in the US, also be safe in your homes based on the unrest in major American cities, and may the God of Israel richly bless you all. Thank you.